Welcome in the studios, everybody, and let's get to another awesome project. Now, this is going to be a doozy. Now, we're rolling into the Halloween season, and I wanted to create something for this month, specifically for the gore and just the spooky season, right? Now, I had a customer reach out to me, a new commission piece that they have requested. Super excited for it. Now, they had also showed interest in the vampire sculpted head that I had sculpted as one of the original projects here on my YouTube channel. Now, of course, I still have that beautiful Tumbler sculpture here on my shelving. So here's a side clip of what that looks like. Now, the customer had requested the same kind of overall full head sculpted theme, but a little bit different. They also showed interest in my Ghostbusters tumbler, where I had the ghost or zombie kind of breaking through the tumbler. Here's a side clip of that, and you can find both of those projects here on my YouTube channel. Now, of course, the vampire version is just more of a little micro clip. That was when I was first getting into recording for content here on YouTube. The actual zombie tumbler, where he's breaking through the outside jacket of the tumbler, has a full dedicated video playlist here on my YouTube channel, so you can always go into the sculpted tumbler playlist and you can check that out. But today in the studio, we're going to be starting the actual sculpt and the paint work for this awesome commission piece. Now, this isn't just going to be your run-of-the-mill actual just sculpted tumbler. We're going to put a lot of detail work into this, and this is going to be on a massive 40-ounce Stanley. Yes, you heard me right. A 40-ounce Stanley. This thing is the size of my flipping head, you guys. Now, we're going to have a little bit of the proportions off, so it's not going to be like my actual size of my head, for instance. Let's go ahead and get some tools out, get the handle off, and then what we'll do is we'll give it a nice love, just a light love touch scuff across the upper portion of the tumbler, so that way we can get a good adhesion with the actual clay that we'll be working with. We're going to sculpt this in sections if we can, depending on how busy I am and how I feel like it's attaching to the outside of the jacket of the tumbler, because this Stanley already has a great layer of black paint on it. It is really durable and it's really nice. I wouldn't even mind having one of these for myself in the future. But of course, we're going to give this Stanley the Flow State Quencher H2.0 tumbler, 40 ounce, all day hydration, I imagine. So that's a big tumbler. All day hydration. An upgrade here. Make sure you check out the link below. I will also link their website down below, so if you want to see any of their amazing tumblers, you can see those. Of course, Stanley in itself has its own cult following for those who love to drink water throughout the day and stay hydrated. It really is a great brand, and you can tell that it's just made very well overall. So let's go ahead and get everything pulled off of it. Let's get it scuffed off. Let's get the handle removed, and let's get to sculpting, you guys. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and jump into the voiceover here as we work through this project. Now, we're going to run into the very first part here is removing the hardware or the handle from the actual stainless steel tumbler. And we're going to go ahead and expose those two tabs of metal. They have two little threads on them that hold the screws in place for the handle to be attached. And we're also going to give this nice outside protective layer, whether it's kind of baked on or sprayed on. I'm not quite sure how that's attached to the outside stainless steel of the tumbler. But we're going to give that a rough up with some sandpaper. It doesn't matter what course it is. We're just going to get it on there. We're also going to use some armature wire here. Now, this is a long piece here that I cut the length. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this around the tumbler, and I'm going to kind of pressure this into place by twisting the ends together. And it's going to keep the surface ready to go. This is going to give us a good surface for us to begin the sculpt work on. I'm also going to notate where the actual handle is with some X-Acto knife work there, and that kind of blends out after a while, and I'll come back in later and use the handle to leave a print on the outside edges of the clay, and then I'll cut that piece away. Now, as you can see here, what I'm doing now is I'm just going to go ahead and apply large sheets of rolled out clay. This is Sculpt Original, and that's what we'll be using for the length of the project. Now, originally I was going to kind of begin to introduce a little bit of Sculpt Original as well as like a paper clay to reduce the overall weight. But I was really happy with the overall weight of it as I started to work through the process and as I started to work around to the back side of the actual decapitated head. So I ended up just continuing with the Sculpt Original. Now, this is a single baked item, which means that I am going to sculpt the front of the head, and then I'll start to work to the sides, and then I'll do the back of the head last before I actually bake it.
It does take a little bit of strategic placement of the tumbler on my workstation because I don't want to kind of wash out or smush, very technical word, any of those details that I'd sculpted in. Now, a lot of my sculptures for faces will kind of go through the same process. Obviously, when you're sculpting a zombie or a vampire or something that's like, mystical or sci-fi or horror, you really aren't held to the same standards as you are when you're actually sculpting a live person, where you don't have a lot of decayed parts or kind of like oblong face pieces, or even just like the square and blocky look of, say, maybe like Frankenstein, perhaps. Speaking of Frankenstein, that would be an awesome project. So if anybody is interested in a commissioned piece of art like Frankenstein, let me know. It doesn't have to be a Tumbler, it could be something else, but I would like to do a Frankenstein project in the near future. As you can see, I did begin with the overall nose formation here. So normally what I'll do with my sculptures is I'll start off with the nose, then I'll kind of bracket in the overall jaw or the cheekbones, then I'll come down and kind of get the lower lip sculpted in, and then I'll get the eyes put in. Now these aren't the eyes that stay in, they're just kind of like the divots, like the little spots where the eyes will be as I get to the detail work on each individual area. Just remember, when you're sculpting large pieces like this, the name of the game is just to get the clay on the item, get it some material built up and blocked in, so that way you can start to detail in the smaller portions here. You'll just like really just throw it onto the item, really cake it in. Just get the general body parts and anatomy kind of locked in, and then you can start to apply like skin textures and different like skin effects and smaller details as you work through the process. Of course, the bigger the sculpture, the more, at times, the more lenient the clay is. Then I say that, and it's also the same thing for something small. So if you're doing something very small, it can be very meticulous. I guess it depends on how much work you would like to put into the item here. Now I'm using smaller tools here, including like little embossing ball tools, stylus tools, silicone tip tools. I even use at some points some flat wooden plank tools, and it all just varies. A lot of carving tools. I'll use a lot of the little triangle as well as circular carving tools to remove clay. And I really do like the kind of like half circle concave metal tip tool that I'll use very often. And it also leaves a very like organic look behind. It leaves it very random and not so uniform. Whereas sometimes when we're sculpting a lot of items, it's so easy just to get like stuck in making everything exactly the same. And when you make a lot of sculptures, but they kind of like cascade into the same kind of overall theme, it's so easy just to find yourself doing the same thing over and over again. And I just don't want that to be the case. So every time I go out of my way to make something new, I do want to change something up a little bit. That way it just kind of makes each piece a little bit unique in some ways. So right now I'm trying to think about how I would like to do this jawbone here. Now I want to make sure that, because this is a severed zombie head, that once I get the kind of the face and the mouth kind of blocking in, I want to think about how I want this jawbone to be. So I'm kind of just blocking in the idea of a ripped part of the jaw and the cheekbone here, and I'm just playing with the idea of having a bunch of teeth marks here. And I know that we're sculpting through the first half of this video, and it's great and all, but it's very hard to kind of like see where my mind's eye is going. But when we start to add paint to it in the second half of the video, it really starts to transform, and you'll really start to see where I'm going with it. I'm also sculpting in just the peeled over skin here, as well as the actual visual part of the jawbone. So we'll come in and we'll give that a different texture and a different direction of the clay striations, and we'll also give that a little bit of a different color, because you'll see that jawbone. The jawbone will have like a tannish tint to it. It'll really pop against all the gore that we're going to kind of paint into the overall bite formations. Now on the left side of the face, or his right hand side, I decided to do something a little bit different. Instead of just going with a bunch of bite marks and tear marks and rips on the face, I decided to go with more of like a decayed look to it, and I really found myself liking this. I would love to come back later and just make like just a decayed plague like doctor, or a plague zombie. That'd be kind of fun to do. But as you can see on the left hand side of his face, you'll notice that cheekbone, or the cheek right below the eye socket, that is really kind of saggy. And the reason it's so saggy is because I want that to look like it's decayed and it's rotting and it's sliding, like there's a lot of like pus or liquid underneath the skin right there. It's causing that skin to bubble up, and then that kind of like cascades down your eyes down onto the actual boils or pus-filled boils that I have along the bottom of the jawbone and the cheek here. And it's going to look really cool when we get some paint on here. Now, throughout this whole process, I'm thinking to myself yellow ochre as far as a primary paint color for the boils, but you could really do these in any real color. You can make them in like a flesh tone, or make them like a light pink color to where like the skin's kind of faded if you were doing like a tan or Caucasian skin. The customer specifically ordered a tumbler with a greenish tinge to the skin, so they wanted a light green tinge to the skin, and we will use a lot of washes and browns to darken that out a little bit. So here we are adding a little bit of just shape to the overall eye sockets here. We're just going to keep these very basic and overall formation here. You could put a lot of wrinkles and tons of detail into these. Now we're just going to go basic, right? So I'm using just a dental tool here, and I'm just going to go ahead and smooth some things out. I want to try to make sure where the eyes themselves are kind of like the same overall shape, so that way they don't steal away from the rest of the anatomy of the face, right? Making sure to bring in some of those tear ducts there, as well as some striations around the bottom and the top of each eye socket, where the eyebrow and the lower eyelid will be. It's the small things that really make a difference, and you really need to make sure you include the overall anatomy in some of these things. Even if you build up like layers like I'm doing here, like I'm adding to the eyebrows, I'm making them thicker as I get to them. And that's the great thing about the sculpting and making things that are inside your head and applying them. With clay, you can easily just add or remove anytime you want, especially with oven baked clay. Air dry clay, you got to work a little bit faster and be a little bit more fine tuned in your processes. But with something oven baked like this, you really have the time that you need. You can set this off to the side and you can work on this for months and months and months, and it will always be ready for you to work on more. And that's the great thing about it. So you don't have to really rush to make sure that you're doing everything right the first time. It's always there for you. You can always make changes if you want. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is I'm actually going to sculpt the teeth in the mouth, all like put in. So a lot of people will kind of sculpt the teeth individually, and then they'll kind of layer them in, or they'll sculpt their teeth, bake them, paint them, and then put them into the clay. I just really did not want to do that for this project, and I'm not saying that I can't sculpt teeth out of like a clear transparent clay, bake them, and then have them like in plastic baggies ready to go for any project. I just really wanted to sculpt this on the go, on the project as I'm working on it. Now, again, stating that this is a zombie cup and a zombie severed head, you can be really lenient with how you make the teeth. You don't have to make the front two teeth like the same, like the perfect like large size, and then the canines, and then as you get to the actual molars in the back, you don't have to be that exact, but you do need to make sure that one, they're kind of getting smaller as they're going back into the cheeks or the jawbone. Make it feel like they're going back into the face. So those front teeth need to be logically sitting out just a little bit more. I do believe that sculpting teeth like this out of Sculpey Original is not for the faint of heart. It does take a little bit of work to get your overall process down. See, right now, I'm going to work my way across this gum line here, and I'm literally going to sculpt in the teeth as I go. And it does take a little bit of work. If you're not used to working with clay, I highly recommend you just kind of do this on the tabletop itself, and then just pick up all of these teeth in a nice little line, and then just lay them on your sculpture and then blend in the gums. It's a little bit easier for you to work on such a smaller area and have that versatility working on a flat surface as opposed to working on this. I actually see the teeth are projected up and away from the sculpture, and that can kind of be tough for beginners at times, because if you apply too much pressure or too much wiggle, the clay can bend or warp or break off where you have blended the gum line already on the lower portion. So I'm not saying you can't do it like the way I just did it, where sculpting it directly on the item, but when everything is a one bake process, you could technically sculpt it separate and then add it later. I would be absolutely glad to revisit that subject in the near future. So just let me know in the comments if that's something y'all want to see more of, teeth and ears and mouth and things. So here I am. I'm kind of gauging just a moment ago with my fingers where I want the overall ears to be. And whenever I try to do ears, I do try to make them, unless I'm trying to make them like torn or eaten or I want them to be super symmetrical, right? If you're looking at the front of the head, and the ears are completely just thrown off, it really just leaves your mind's eye with a bad idea of how the sculpture looks. So we need to go out of our way to make sure it's at least somewhat anatomically correct. So you need to think about how like the corner of your eye goes around to the back of the head. What part of the ear does that line up with? Well, how far does your ear go down the side of your head to your jawbone or your cheekbone? Those are the things that you need to kind of look into. And again, as we do more sculptures that are more realistic, like real people or real items instead of like just a zombie out of my head, it kind of locks you into having it a certain way. On the back of the tumbler, I decided to keep things very simplistic overall because this is technically where the handle is going to be. I didn't want to have too much overall texture for her hands or her fingers to hit on all the time. So we just made the overall back of the head very kind of ripply and like nasty, like bald skin type of textures. And I'm using my glove here to make those, cutting out the holes for the handle here. And then we will pour those in with the gore. So that'll come back in the painting process of the video. We're also going to cut away that top rim. Now, there's two parts to this. This is beneficial for me because it helps me to get epoxy to the very top of the rim and really seal everything in for the customer. It creates a better overall crafted epoxy item because this is a piece of drinkware after all. Number two, it really leaves a cool effect. So whereas if the customer ever wanted to order like a topper or anything for the overall tumbler, I could always come back later and do that, and it would blend into like a brain topper or something like that later on down the road. So it's definitely doable, and I could always make that in the future. So I'll just use a little concave metal tool here. We'll peel back that skin a little bit, and then that will be the actual scalp line of the tumbler. I decided not to put hair on this version of the zombie. I thought that the overall decay and the plague and the boils and the rippled skin really looked great, and I felt like hair would just really take away from the overall sculpture way too much, and I'm really happy I went with the direction that I did. Now, one of the challenges that I decided to include in the sculpture for this project is I really wanted to experiment with adding magnetic pieces to the tumblers. So I decided to make the right hand side, the zombie's left hand ear, detachable. So I used around 6 total magnets to create a separate ear that will have its own video, and I'm going to label that "Follow the Ear" from the beginning of the sculpting process until we're ready to put it in the packaging just send with this order. Now at this point we have it baked completely and we're about to roll into the paint, but look how great it looks. Now the customer specifically requested that this be a cup holder friendly project, so I did not sculpt any further down than the kind of the concave of the natural tumbler. So we're going to do something different with the lower portion, and that's because they want it to fit in a cup holder. So be aware, could we have sculpted the overall neck and continued down with the spine? Yeah, we could have, but that's not what we're going to do for this project because we're trying to meet the needs of the customer as well. We're also going to test fit the overall handle here. It's just 2 little simple screws that hold this in, but we want to make sure that that continuously works throughout the whole process. We already have our holes there for our ear. Yes, I know, I decided to show it anyways, even if it's not part of this overall content for this video. But you can see we did sculpt that on the side earlier in the process, and we baked that as well. But overall, I'm really happy with how it turns out, and we're going to go ahead and get ready to get some paint on this bad boy. Alright, so second half of the video, who's excited for some paint? Everybody loves the sculpting process, and people really tune in for that, but painting is awesome too, and it's part of the creation process. We're going to use a multitude of paints here, starting off with a lamp black. I say lamp black instead of Mars black because I need to get rid of this paint. It really doesn't matter because it's going to be a base coat. We're also going to come in with a lot of water. A lot of water in this first layer. And we're going to come in with a little bit of burnt umber and raw umber. Both of them are very earthy, dirty, nasty. Who covered colors? No, I'm kidding. But when you mix them with water, it really does get like just muddy and nasty. And hey, it just starts off the painting process in the right direction. And look how great it looks overall, the sculpted items here. Now it's really going to start to settle down into all those nooks and crannies. Now, a lot of times in the past, I would come in and I would just apply just a full-on Mars Black cover base over the entire sculpted surface. And I just didn't want to do that with this project. I just felt like really just enjoying the painting process in more of a wash format before I started to come in with my thicker colors. So I'm not doing like I'm kind of doing the thick over lean a little bit, but it's really great. So I'm introducing more browns as I build up the colors here. We're not introducing sap green yet. Don't worry. The customer requested a greenish tint to the skin. We will get to that. Don't worry. Introducing more of that just brown, decayed, muddy water there. And we're also applying more of that lamp black into specific areas to kind of dinge it out. We're also going to do that for the back of the tumbler as well. And I also did a little bit of editing there, the magic of editing. And now we're working with a little bit of sap green here, as well as burnt umber. We're going to mix these up and we're going to get a nice dingy, dark, like nice green color. It's almost like a mossy green, but we're also going to come in very thin with this, right? So we're going to use a lot of water throughout this process, and we're also going to use that burnt umber to really continuously darken out the shadows. Now we're going to start off very thin with this, and we're just going to kind of see how we like the overall color tone as we start to apply this. When you work in very thin layers like this, you get a lot of depth to the overall skin texture. And when you do this, it actually looks a lot more realistic because you're kind of varying up the splotching of the skin instead of it just being all one shade in color. Every time you go in to try to mix a different layer, it gives you a little bit of a different result. But as you kind of fine tune the process towards later on in games of the project, it just gives you a lot of depth, and I'm really in love with the overall process. So if you do paint things like this, work in washes. Always think in thin layers, washes, let it dry, come in with your next layer, and build up from there. Going over that right-hand side ear, his right-hand side, and then we'll kind of continue those colors onto the back as well. We're also going to introduce a little bit of cadmium yellow, and here we are coming in with this yellow ochre. Yes, you heard me. Yellow ochre. How awesome is this? Now, this is going to be like kind of the base coat for the canker look. So you're going to see the yellow ochre come in some of the high raised areas. We're going to start the painting of the teeth apart from the original wash that we put on with yellow ochre, and then we'll start to build up our colors from there. It gives us a nice decayed look to begin with. You don't know how long this zombie's been around. Don't judge his teeth. Do not judge this guy. We're also going to start off with the boils. So all of those boils are going to get a healthy layer of yellow ochre. And I'll also introduce a little of that yellow in there just to brighten the colors just a little bit. We want those boils to be very visible on the background of the green. So we'll continuously introduce a little bit of those lighter colors as we work around here. Applying a little bit of that to the undertone of the skin here. Just remember that when I'm applying these lighter colors to the actual skin itself, a lot of that's going to get washed out as I come in with the later green layers. But some of that yellow will really kind of tone and change the way that the skin looks. And it's going to make it a little bit more brighter, a little bit more like bring a little bit of life to it, right? It doesn't have to be all very dark and dingy. And when you do bring a lot of those highlights and lighter skin tones to some of those raised edges, it just accents those deeper colors a little bit more. And remember that this is not really a truly sculpted face item because it doesn't have the true depth of the face we probably would see in a head this size. And because we were kind of wrapping this around a cylinder or a tumbler, it kind of distorts the anatomy just a little bit. And that's completely fine. We understand that. But when you're using the paint as an additive to help with the illusion of depth, it really does help out a lot. Now we're starting to come in with some of our high raised highlights here. Now we're not done with the paint for the washes, but this is what we're going to roll in with next. All right, so as we start to apply a lot more of those raised highlights there, we're going to start to apply those to the teeth, a little bit of titanium white there, just so that we can go ahead and get the base put down for some of our brighter colors, including a little bit more yellow ochre. So we're also going to go over that the bone piece of the nose, or the cartilage, the cheekbone, as well as the jawbone with that titanium white, and it just gives us that nice base coat. We're also going to go ahead and give the eyes a layer of white here. Being very careful not to get too much over paint onto the actual sculpted pieces of the eyelids in those little wrinkles there. Now, just be aware that I was really unhappy with how the eyes were turning out. So I will get into that later, guys. Just be aware it's a rant, but it's more so just about following your artistic, journey and really just making the eyes look how you want them to. I'm also going to apply a little bit of a yellow tone to those, a little bit of that leftover yellow off my palette. And we're also going to start to apply more of those highlights there. So as we apply more highlights, we'll come in with some more washes later on in the process. But look how great those boils look so far. And we're going to continue that painting process all the way around to the back as well. Now here we are coming with a little bit of yellow ochre, as well as this is a crimson. Now, and the reason I do this is because when you're working with reds, and you're going to apply blood to them, you want to start with your earthy colors first. So that way that when you do get to those red blood layers, they just look a little bit brighter. If you just wash it out with the same old red color, it just takes away from the depth that you need when you're doing paintings like this. So if you are painting gore, or you're painting like gums or teeth or anything like that, just remember, start off with your base earthy colors and then work your way up into those bright highlights. The very last highlight that we'll do with the red is actually just a pure crimson, and you'll definitely see when that starts to layer onto the canvas here, because it just changes the whole way it all looks. So we're also using a little bit of alizarin crimson, much darker here, and that's going to be in the selected areas, and usually I'll use that as a base coat inside, like the slash on the lip, around the edges of the nose, in any of those cuts, and we'll kind of cascade that down. But the gums themselves did have a little bit of a brown or a yellow ochre tone to them, so that way we had something to build off of. And it's supposed to be simulate that's the torn part of the skin. So the outside jacket, or the upper layer of the dermis, is actually just the green color, and then just under that you have the actual decayed muscle tissue, which is the lighter orangish/brown with the yellow ochre. And then we're going to start to come in with a little bit higher layers of red here. And also make that ear the same way. So remember, we're going to have that detachable ear there. That was one of the challenges that I challenged myself with this project. So if you're looking to have a bunch of detachable, like magnetic parts on the tumbler, then just be aware that I'm starting to experiment with that, and I look forward to making a lot of sculptures in the near future with similar kind of features. Pretty cool. All right, so here we are with a little bit more watered down blood red here. Now this is going to be actually a alizarin crimson, so we're not in the crimson yet. We're in the alizarin crimson, and we're going to go ahead and just layer in a little bit more water in this, guys, watery blood. And we're going to let this blood kind of run its length, run where it needs to be. If it ever comes off of like one of these boils a little bit too much, then I'll kind of wipe that away. Now let's talk about the blood and the boils. Like, I decided to go with a little bit of slices on the boils and blood coming out of them instead of pus. The way that I'm thinking about these boils are they're very thick skinned. And the way that I like to think of them is they're not like thin skinned boils, which would have like a very white top texture. They're very thick. That's why they're the yellow ochre. I just felt like pus would be too much. The customer's going to be drinking from this and showing this off at work or wherever she goes throughout her life. And I want this to be a part like a cool item, not like a item, right? So I don't want her to feel like this, like just look at the item and say, man, that's gross. There's like pus coming in all these little orbs and boils, and that's gross. Like, could I have done a pus and blood mixture? Yeah, I could have done that. But I think it's a little bit too much. And my wife agreed that it's a little bit too much. So I decided to rein myself in a little bit and just go with the blood. And I think that it also kind of brought the left-hand side of the face into the right-hand side. Because as you can see, the right-hand side has a lot of blood and a lot of scrapes and a lot of cuts and bruising and ears missing, right? I wanted to kind of bring the left-hand side in, and by me adding a little bit of that blood drip to those boils, it kind of helped with that. We're also applying a little bit of blood to each individual tooth, and again, we are not to the bright highlights of the blood yet. We'll get to that later. It'll be one of the last stages. All right, let's talk about these eyes, guys. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'd come back and start talking about them, and I am doing so. So during this process, I had a lot of back and forth in my heart about how I wanted to paint these. And let's talk about what I'm doing now. I decided to paint them in the same overall artistic format as the original that the customer had liked. And in doing so, I painted the irises by hand with a little micro brush. I enjoy the process. I enjoy laying in individual brush strokes on the iris, and then painting the actual the black center of the eye, and then kind of aging around the outside edges with blood and a little bit of yellow and some veining. And it looks good. It looks great. Look at the eye. Look deep into the black of the eye. Look into it as we zoom in here. Look at it. It looks great. And I could have taken a little bit further, but I don't finish the eye to completion. Okay? In my heart, something just fell off with it. It looks great, don't get me wrong, and it would have looked amazing. But in my artistic heart, something just felt wrong. And I don't know if it was just maybe the shape of the eyes. Maybe I didn't bring them in towards the nose far enough, so it felt like they were just looking a little bit too far in different directions maybe. It was so subtle that I just don't know. I just didn't feel it. But upon me researching a lot of zombies and having fun on the internet, as we all do as artists, I really felt drawn into this piece of art to the milky white zombie eye. Okay, just remember that. Milky white zombie eye. We'll make a return to that in a few moments. But remember, I just didn't feel good about it. We're going to come back to it later. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll say it again in a minute. Which do you like more? The blood red eye like I'm working on here, or the milky white? We'll come back to it later. Leave a comment below. I need to know what y'all like. What do you like in your zombies' eyes? So I'm darkening out the lower portions of the eyes here. It really makes it feel like the eye is going into the actual face, and it's not just sitting on the surface. And again, we would also come in later on, and we would also darken out the iris itself with a little bit of blood as well, like just a blood film to make it look like that's blended into the eye of the outside eye layers, right? The film of the eye. Here we are. We're getting a lot bloody here, guys. We're starting to raise the highlights of the blood a little bit here, and we're not doing full coats. Never do full coats, but it is starting to come up a little bit. We're using more so watered down pure crimson for some of these high raised edges, and it's going to bring up the realism a little bit. We're also going to go over the spine just really quickly. It's just Naples yellow. I'll build a few layers of that up, and we'll give it the same blood layer texture around the outsides of the torn skin. Here we are with the eyes. Okay, I have the milky white eyes in my heart, you guys. It's in my soul, and I have to do it, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a pure titanium white. Well, not pure. It's a watered down titanium white to the eye. We're going to use the existing eye that I had already painted as the centerpiece, and it's going to poke through. We're going to use a little bit of pearl. That's a metallic pearl from Folk Art for the centerpiece, and then we'll use a little bit of Mars Black and titanium white to kind of vein the eye. You'll see it again here in a little bit. Shifting gears here, guys, we're going to start to work on the actual muscles around the neck. Now, I had a lot of different variations of what I could do here, but I decided to keep it super basic and super fun, and I'll describe why. I made this with pretty much only two, maybe three, mainly two colors for the entire neck. Can you paint with limited palette? Of course you can. And what we're thinking here is, my thinking is, I could spend hundreds of hours painting every single muscle in the neck. But I'd really like to just express just fun and free artistic design with it, and just generally just really quickly paint in the muscle structure and the striations of the muscle. So as I start to refine these overall muscle tones and neck anatomy, just be aware that I'm just really quickly just throwing it in, and we're going to use a little bit of alizarin crimson, a little bit of Mars Black, but mostly it's going to be only Naples yellow and crimson. Naples yellow and crimson is the only colors that we're pretty much using on the neck to go for the overall muscle tone and direction of the muscles in the neck. It's really cool, you guys. Now, if you're a fan of Attack on Titan, the anime, I haven't watched it in a very long time, but I know there's a lot of people out there who are going to be watching this that probably have seen it. If you haven't, it's okay. If you Google it, they have a very distinct animation style for the necks and the exposed muscles in the giants and whatnot, right? So when I got done with it, I'm like, man, that kind of looks like that. It's really cool artistically with the way I did these muscles. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm just super excited. When I apply epoxy to it, Flynn Sister Epoxy, affiliate code in the description below if you want to check out epoxy or looking to get into tumblers or dioramas and you need to make that water feature, that's the epoxy for you. You can use my code BStudios. Yeah, okay, I threw my plug in there, but anyways, so we're doing a little bit of a smaller brush here just to apply a little bit of shadow and dimension between some of the muscle layers in between each one, so it makes it look, some muscles are going underneath others and things like that. But look how great that looks, and it really didn't take me very long, but it was a really cool effect. It's the first time I painted muscles like that, and they turned out absolutely great. Giving a little bit more extra time to the left eye because I hadn't done the left eye because I did the right eye. We're going to go ahead and finish those out here now. It's just a little bit goes a long way when you're making milky eyes like this. And of course, you can apply different layers and different colors, and you can really change things up how they would look. However, here we are. We have the thing completely painted out to absolute perfection. And I do detail a few pieces as we go throughout the process. But as you can see, I have the spine painted out with a little bit of blood texture wash. We also have the places underneath the handles painted as well in a gore texture, a little bit of blood. It's just pure crimson. We have all of the eyes as well as the cheekbones and all of the boils and teeth painted out to perfection. And also the muscle tone around the bottom of the tumbler really does complement the upper portion and the greens. Now we're going to be using Flynn's Sister Boutique 2-part regular set epoxy. Regular set because we want to give the epoxy time for all of those bubbles and all those nooks and crannies of the teeth and the ears and the nose to rise to the surface and pop on their own. We'll use a heat gun and a torch to pop those along the way if we need to. However, just be aware that this is beyond the best epoxy that I've come across. I used to use cheaper versions like Amazing Clear Cast that you buy from Hobby Lobby and Michaels, and it just was not cutting it. Flynn's Sister Epoxy. My code is in the description below for money's off if you're looking to get into this for any reason whatsoever. We're going to hit it with a heat gun here, guys, but just be aware. This epoxy is bar none the best that you're going to run across, and it is absolutely amazing. All right, you guys, so we're in the final end games of the project here, and it's super exciting. All right, are you ready for the reveal? I think I'm ready. 3, 2, 1. La-la! Okay, wrong tone. Voila! How awesome is this, you guys? Now I have it super zoomed out on my camera here. Look how beastie oh no, the ear fell off. The atrocity. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit here, guys. Look how awesome this thing looks. Okay, we have the boils. We have the ear, which is already attached. Okay, it's cool. But we also have the esophagus and the bone texture. We have the neck muscles already epoxied to perfection. We have the jawbone, which is detached. Of course, the tumbler top is removable with all the existing Stanley details in the inside because the customer specifically requested a Stanley tumbler. We have also all of the blood texture perfectly layered here. The boils look amazing. All of the spine is fully covered in epoxy and ready to go. Everything is protected, you guys. That's the most difficult thing when you make tumblers like this, especially with the peeled back skin, the super high raised edges. We want to make sure we're able to cover everything. Now I put a total of 4 layers of strictly only applied epoxy in particular areas, right? Strictly applied. So a lot of times I'm using a paintbrush to apply my epoxy. But look at the detail work that survives the overall thick layers of epoxy that we do put on. It's phenomenal. We have the teeth, we have the nose, we have all of the skin pulled back from those cuts and rips on the right hand side of the face. The right hand side of the tumbler where the ear is missing, and the magnets are kind of put into place with E6000 glue. We also have the sagging like sack under the eye where the cheekbone is full of liquid or maybe soon to be boils. It looks absolutely phenomenal. Remember that those milky eyes are watching you. We have all of those sculpted details around each individual eye completely visible. The nose again has a exposed bone or cartilage. I'm not going on the details, guys. The cartilage and bone to me are the same thing. Unless I'm willing to cut the whole nose apart, we don't need to worry about cartilage. We have all of the teeth, which actually you can still feel all of the sculpted details in, but they are protected by the epoxy. We have the upper lip. We have all of the bite marks on the right-hand side of the jaw. It is absolutely amazing. Look at the eyes, guys. Remember I said that we were going to do milky eyes? Do they not contrast better against the dark green and yellow ochre skin? Leave in the comments below, which eyes do you like the most? Now, of course, we're going to do a weigh-in, you guys. What do you think I am, an amateur? Now, this is a beast of a tumbler. Not only is it a 40 ounce, but it's also a beast of a sculpture. Now, this entire sculpture comes out to be 2 pounds and 9 ounces. We're going to round up to 3 pounds. I usually say another additional pound on my packaging. So it's a total of a 4 pound shipped item. Absolutely phenomenal. Now, again, this was a commission piece from an awesome customer who reached out to me through my Etsy shop. So if you're looking for awesome art, reach out to me, guys. Now, sometimes my wait time is a little bit longer depending on how many big, massive projects I go on. So reach out to me, ask me what my wait times are like, and then I can definitely look into making you something just as good, if not better, than this one. We are always evolving in the studio, as you can see. I've never painted muscle tone, and look how great it turned out, you guys. I'm super happy with this project. It took me almost like a month and a half, maybe 2 months to make it in total, but it was a blast of a sculpture. If you would like this specific design, it is currently on my Etsy shop. I also have some smaller versions as well on there for choice as well. Look how great this tumbler looks, you guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this content. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on the next commission piece of art, or if it's something that me and the kids are having fun with in the studio. This thing turned out beyond my expectations, and I really do hope you guys enjoyed the journey with me. Otherwise, guys, I will catch you on the next awesome video, which will be the ear, the journey of the ear. Oh, there it is, as you can see. Ha! Absolutely freaking awesome. See you on the next video, guys. Later.